My childhood friend, a genius and top student, was about to give up his spot at a prestigious university. Determined to follow his first love, I intervened, trying to talk him out of it. But he retaliated by sabotaging my career and held a grudge against me for the rest of his life. Later, Julian was accepted into a top university, completing his master's and doctoral studies, soaring to fame and fortune. Yet, he blamed me for ruining his love life. He drove me to unemployment and debt, pushing me to the brink of a heart attack, and I tragically died on the operating table. On the day I was kicked out of the company, he warned me, "Chester, this is your price. I curse you, may you never find love in your next life." When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the year he was about to go after Chloe. This time, I would do as he wished. I wouldn't meddle in his affairs. I was curious to see how far his love would go, now that the genius halo was no longer around him. "Chester, my supervisor wants to talk to me. Do you think I should submit my graduate school recommendation materials?" Julian came to find me after class, repeatedly asking for my opinion. I turned instinctively as I heard his voice. At 21, Julian wore an expression full of conflict, anxiously awaiting my answer. "Hurry up. Help me decide. Should I submit the materials or not?" Seeing his impatient expression, I wondered why he even had to ask. I gave a rational response. "Why not? You know how many people are scrambling to take the entrance exams every year. Some people would jump at the chance to be recommended. But you're still hesitating? You're really taking your blessings for granted." But Julian still seemed torn. "But if I go to grad school, Chloe will have to go back to her hometown for work. What if we have to be in a long-distance relationship?" Now I understood Julian was willing to forgo his opportunity for grad school to follow Chloe. In my previous life, I had secretly met with Chloe behind Julian's back, just as his childhood friend. I told Chloe openly that day, "Julian has a bright future ahead. He's been recommended for a university, and his possibilities are endless. If he gives up grad school for you, I'm not sure how far he can go, and I wonder if you two can last in the future." Chloe knew Julian and I had grown up together. She was always wary of me, fearing I would threaten her place as his girlfriend. But all I wanted was for Julian to have a bright future. Julian was an adopted child from the neighboring family. He had lost his parents at a young age. One cold winter, Margaret had heard the cries of a baby from a trash can, and she took him home. They depended on each other, surviving by scavenging, often eating just one meal a day. During those years, my father's business was just starting to grow, opening small shops in the county. My grandmother passed away early, but my father, seeing how hard things were for them, gave them money each month and paid Julian's tuition every year. Luckily, heading to Feldmaid. Julian was a hard worker and always topped his class. But now, he was letting love cloud his judgment, willing to give up a promising grad school future. In my previous life, I wouldn't allow that to happen, not wanting Margaret to suffer. So, I intervened. I told Chloe, "If your love is strong enough, what's the harm in waiting a few more years? If Julian finishes grad school, he might even get a direct PhD offer. He'll improve, and your future will be just as bright. Julian is still immature, don't you think?" After some thought, Chloe listened to me. She broke up with Julian after returning home. Julian was heartbroken and submitted his grad school materials overnight, focusing entirely on his studies. He eventually went on to a PhD, with his career advancing smoothly, and was recruited by a top national company. During his PhD years, Julian met his current girlfriend, Yineng. There was no love between them, but due to the nature of their work, they ended up living together. When Julian met Chloe again, it was during his New Year's trip back home. He was caught off guard. Julian realized that he didn't feel passion for his current life because he had lost his first love. Reuniting after so long, Julian eagerly hugged Chloe. "Why didn't you come find me?" Chloe gently pushed him away. "Instead of having you give up everything you've worked for, I'd rather help you succeed. You see, you're doing well now. And I'm happy. I have a fiancé who loves me very much." Chloe's calm release of the past broke Julian. "Then why did you break up with me?" I loved you so much. Thanks to Chester. Or else you wouldn't be so successful now. And I wouldn't have met my fiancé. Julian begged. Can we get back together? Now I have money. Power, everything. Chloe advised him to let go. We're both doing fine now. Just let it go. Though fate didn't work out, I treasure what I have now. Watching Chloe leave with her fiancé, Julian broke down. He couldn't accept that. At the height of his success, he had lost the one person he loved the most. He turned around and kicked down my door. Chester. Open the door. You owe me an explanation today. Julian stormed in with a violent kick, smashing down my door. I was casually watching TV, completely baffled. Without saying a word, Julian grabbed a bottle of water from the table and poured it all over me, seething with anger as he demanded, "Why did you break me and Chloe up? Why did you make Chloe break up with me? Why did you destroy my love?" Julian's three rapid-fire questions left me stunned. Before I could respond, Julian slapped me across the face. The sting burned. I already had mouth sores. And now it hurt even more. This was the first time in my life I had been slapped. My dad had never hit me. Not even once. Julian. You think you can do whatever you want. What do you mean I broke you and Chloe up? I was just stating the facts. Whether you broke up or not is your business. Julian glared at me with a fierce look and stepped closer. One step at a time. I know everything now. If you hadn't meddled, Chloe would never have broken up with me. Maybe we would have already married and had kids. Because of you, I lost the only love of my life. Now, you'll pay the price. I can't have love. And neither can you. Julian pushed me onto the sofa, leaning over me. I struggled to push him away. Calm down. You have a girlfriend now. Julian pinned me down. His grip tight. So what? I don't love her. You broke me and Chloe up because you wanted me. Right? Well, now I'm giving you what you want. Taking advantage of a moment when Julian wasn't paying attention, I bit his arm and broke free. I don't like you at all. Don't get the wrong idea. As for Chloe, I only said what needed to be said. If you hadn't gone to grad school, do you think you'd have all this now? You've gotten used to the good life. Do you forget how hard it was before? Do you forget those days of eating pig food? Margaret worked so hard, scavenging to get you dinner. She did all that to raise you. Do you think abandoning grad school for Chloe is fair to your years of hard work and to Margaret? Julian was too angry to hear me out and retorted bitterly. Even if I didn't go to grad school, I would have still thrived. But Chloe is about to become someone else's bride. Now. I watched Julian following right behind me, hoping I'll give him some advice. When I reopened my eyes, I was sure this time I really had been reborn. I won't involve myself in Julian's matters again. I want to see how far his love can go now that he no longer has the genius halo. I told Julian, do whatever you like. And I teased. You're so brilliant. Wherever you go, you'll shine. Anyway, as long as you're happy. Upon hearing that I didn't oppose him, Julian silently made a decision. As expected, Julian really chose to give up his reserved spot for graduate school. With the spot now vacant, our class advisor recommended me. I quietly submitted my application for the graduate spot. In my previous life, I had to study late into the night, pushing myself hard, and only managed to get into my desired school in my second year. This time, thanks to Julian's impulsiveness, I ended up with an unexpected surprise. When Julian went to follow Chloe, I didn't stop him. Before he left, he happily came back to thank me. Chester, thank you for supporting me. Chloe and I will be so happy. After Julian left, I returned to my own life, traveling abroad during the holidays. When I came back, I went straight to school to report and immersed myself in studying again. I knew I had to work hard to change my fate. I couldn't let things repeat like in the past, where I was bullied and eventually ended up in the same tragic fate Julian caused me. I was thrown out of the company, without the ability to fight back. Classmates were buzzing in the group chat, saying Julian followed Chloe for love, leaving a top-tier city to work in a small company in a third-tier city. The two rented a tiny apartment, commuting together every day. still in love as before. Back then, it was I who recommended Julian to sign up for the evening party. Chloe, having fulfilled my say, the cultural commissioner, was often in charge of school events, and many people pursued her. Julian, Ninlu, the famous academic genius, had won awards in various competitions. Over time, Chloe was drawn to Julian's talent, and they developed feelings for each other. In order to pursue Chloe, Julian distanced himself from me, acting like we weren't familiar when we met at school. Every week when school ended, Julian would intentionally stay half an hour later than me. The talented scholar and the beauty our classmates all envied them. You two better stay happy, or I'll stop believing in love. During my master's studies, I occasionally glanced at the group messages. It was mostly gossip among classmates. Chloe listened to her family and worked at a relative's company after graduation. Rumors said they were both doing well. When I returned home at the end of the month, thinking of Julian being so far away, I decided to visit Margaret. But when I arrived, the house was empty, and I found out Margaret had been hospitalized. Margaret had learned that her grandson gave up his bright future, and she was so upset she fell and was hospitalized, almost ending up in the ICU. The old woman held my hand, tears welling up in her eyes. Chester, why didn't you try to persuade Julian? Why is he throwing everything away? I informed Julian about Margaret's hospitalization, and he rushed back immediately. He appeared at the hospital door, holding Chloe's hand, completely absorbed in his love. Margaret urged Julian to return to school, but Julian led Chloe to her bedside. Grandma, don't you want to see me get married and have children? I found the love of my life. And I have a job. Margaret didn't even look at Julian. She quietly turned her head away. In the following days, Margaret's condition worsened, and she needed another surgery. The surgery required 100,000 yuan, and Julian struggled to raise the money. Chloe couldn't take much leave, so she went back to work first. Julian was frantic, trying to scrape together 2 months' worth of wages with Chloe, but they barely managed to gather 30,000. Julian, like, desperate and helpless, sat in the hospital stairwell smoking. At his wit's end, he cried and begged me for help, asking to borrow 70,000 yuan. Chester, for the sake of us growing up together, please help me. Margaret, after all, had watched me grow up. Even though I resented Julian in my past life, I couldn't bear to see her leave like this. In my previous life, Julian had ridden on the coattails of his professor, taking on a big project in his second year of grad school and achieving financial freedom. That year, he brought Margaret to live with him and hired a caregiver for her. On the phone, Margaret often praised Julian. Julian's doing well now. Even if I were to die now, I have no regrets. Looking at Julian's current helpless situation, so different from his previous life, I had mixed feelings. I had Julian sign an agreement, promising to repay the money within 6 months. The surgery was barely successful. The doctor warned that Margaret would need to stay in bed for the rest of her life. The old woman had survived, and Julian sighed in relief. I was relieved that, at least for Margaret, Julian still held on to a sense of gratitude. Afterward, I returned to school and focused on my research. Julian took Margaret to his and Chloe's city. Unable to afford a caregiver, Julian would buy food during his breaks, and they took turns taking care of her. To repay me, Julian was under a lot of pressure. With a monthly salary of 5,000 yuan, he gave me 4,000 every month. This was our only form of contact. Chloe saw that Julian couldn't save any money each month. He couldn't even buy himself a bed, and he was so strapped for cash that she had to pay the rent. Even though they weren't married yet, she already felt like there was a burden in the house. She started to get angry with Julian, complaining about how difficult it was to have an elderly person in the house. For the sake of caring for the elderly, their once blissful relationship was now turned upside down. At first, Julian patiently explained, "Chloe, just wait a few more months. Everything will get better. Once I repay this money, I'll start saving for a house." But Chloe exploded, venting her frustrations all at once. "With your salary of 5,000 a month, 1,000 for rent, another 1,000 for food and necessities, You're left with 3,000. How long will it take for you to save enough for a house? I chose you because you were talented, charming, and I thought your future was bright. But now I regret it. I can't see any future with you. Holding the freshly changed sheets, Chloe spoke bitterly. I'm a young woman with so much potential. And I've never even cared for my own parents. Now, I come home from work every day, barely eating. And I have to clean up after your grandmother. Do you know what? At work, my colleagues laugh behind my back, saying I stink. When Julian heard Chloe complain about his grandmother, he slapped her across the face. She's my grandmother. You can say whatever you want about me, but you can't say that about her. Chloe, cutting fulfilled rant session. Furious. Left home. Fine, but not alone, sorry. She's so important. You take care of her yourself. Margaret, watching the two young people argue, quietly shed tears, asking to return to her hometown. Julian called me to vent, speaking to himself. Why has Chloe changed so much? She used to be so gentle and considerate. But now she's completely changed. I gave up my graduate school recommendation to come to this dreadful place for her. And now she's rejecting me. Do you know what she said to me today? She actually told me that she can't see a future with me anymore. I remained calm, placing the phone down while I continued to focus on recording the experimental data for the day. After all, this was the life he had chosen. He chose love, and gave up the bright future that could have been his. In reality, nothing had changed. People are simply multifaceted and complex. In different environments, a person's temperament will shift in response to the circumstances. Julian had never experienced the harshness of society before. After being recommended for graduate school, he soared to new heights, receiving many opportunities and resources. At that time, he stood on the clouds of happiness, unable to feel the pain. It was only when the Son of Heaven fell from those clouds that I felt sympathy for Margaret. In her old age, her fate changed due to the different choices of her grandson. When Julian ended the call, there was a hint of regret in his voice. And he choked out, "Did I make the wrong choice?" I didn't answer directly. In my previous life, Julian always blamed me for destroying his love. To take revenge on me, he intentionally leaked my experimental data at the company, causing me to be blamed, leading to unemployment, debt, and a ban from the industry. My dream of dedicating myself to research was forcibly cut short. Even my boyfriend at the time broke up with me over this. My parents couldn't hold their heads high in the village, and I had no face to return home. The second half of my life was completely ruined by Julian. In this life, when faced with Julian, I almost avoided him at all costs. Listening to him ramble on was a waste of my time. My roommate asked, "Are you on the phone with your boyfriend?" I smiled faintly and shook my head. "Just a passerby. No need to care. This life, I found a new boyfriend. Ryan. Within my research mentor's team. He was caring and kind. In our studies, he helped me improve, constantly encouraging me to study harder. Even in experiments that weren't going well, he patiently guided me. Sometimes, he would pretend to stay late at the lab, and he'd buy me a late-night snack, taking me out to eat hot pot at midnight. Ryan looked at me with concern. "You're the hardest working girl I've seen. While others are eating, drinking, and having fun, you're always buried in the lab. It's a little different." I leaned against his shoulder as we walked down the campus path. Maybe it's because I didn't have such a good life in the last one. This time, I want to work harder. Only I knew how sad I felt when I said that. I checked the group messages again, and my classmates were all talking about how Chloe and Julian had broken up. I heard they had an intense argument. And after Chloe ran away from home, Julian went to win her back. Chloe looked at him and smiled helplessly. "What do you have to offer to win me back? Money? Do you have any? Or is it your job? With that pathetic job of yours. Your salary here. Rent. And even your grandmother's medical expenses, how will you take care of me?" Julian grabbed Chloe's hand, pleading humbly. "I gave up grad school for you. Isn't that proof of my heart?" Julian's words completely enraged Chloe. "Julian, don't flatter yourself by saying it was for me. I really can't take it. If you truly loved me and cared for me, you should never have given up grad school. I want you to have a bright future. Not to grovel in this small place. Trapping your life. I loved the Julian who shone brightly. Not the one who's now helpless and bound by reality. Julian clung to the last shred of hope. Chloe. Please don't leave me. Is our love so fragile it can't withstand any blow? Chloe stood still, laughing softly at how ridiculous it all seemed. What's the use of love? Can love overcome all obstacles? Have you seen Tiny Times? Guli said. Love without material support is like loose sand. It doesn't take much for the wind to scatter it. Julian, what lo sai? Our love has already fallen apart. And it didn't even take the wind to blow it away. Chloe's words shattered the last defense inside Julian. He collapsed emotionally, screaming hoarsely. I've already lost the chance to be recommended for grad school. If I lose you too, I really will go crazy. No matter how much Julian tried to salvage it, Chloe walked away without looking back. I quietly observed the group chat, where everyone was discussing Julian's current situation. Some said he was in a very depressed state. Others said he had not only picked up smoking but also started drinking. It had only been half a year since he gave up grad school. And yet, his life had completely turned upside down. I went to visit Julian. And the reason was simple. He hadn't transferred money to me for 2 months. When I arrived at his rented place, there were empty bottles all over the floor. And cigarette butts scattered around. It was exactly as the group chat had described. Julian was lying slouched on the sofa, in a terrible state. I ignored him and walked into another room. When Margaret saw me, she burst into tears and tried to stand up to greet me. Margaret sobbed. Julian is ruined. He didn't even finish grad school. I worked so hard to send him to school, hoping one day he'd become independent. Now he can't study. His girlfriend left. And he lost his job. He might as well go back home and farm. I just want to end it all, but I can't bear to leave him like this. Julian's situation was far worse than I imagined. I never thought it would be this bad. I bought my grandmother new clothes and gave her 1,000 yuan. Because Margaret was present. I didn't mention the debt to Julian face to face. I sent him a message on my phone instead. Be a man and honor your word. Don't forget to pay me back. Julian, in a semi-conscious state, still remembered the jibe he'd thrown at me. Are you here to watch me make a fool of myself too? I didn't have time to indulge in Julian's drama. This time, I was here on a business trip for a project. And I just happened to stop by to check on Margaret. I walked up to him and softly said, you can spiral as much as you would. Just remember to pay me back the money. In my past life, I lost my job because of Julian, ended up unemployed and in debt, and was even abandoned by my boyfriend. I was empty-handed in both career and love, drowning in debt, and eventually ended up on the streets. In the cold winter, I could only warm myself by leaning against a wall, eating the leftover sweet potatoes from others. When Julian saw me at my lowest, he crouched down like he pitied a stray dog, throwing bits of change, 100 yuan here and there, right in front of me. Here's my charity. If you leave, at least go out as a fat beggar. At that moment, my dignity was crushed beneath his feet. His tone dripped with hatred, yet he couldn't resist mocking me. Now you know what it feels like to lose everything. Huh? What I wanted was for you to be disgraced, to lose everything. That year, I didn't die from the cold or hunger. Instead, I died from the rage he caused me. I had a heart attack, the strain from the anger too much for my heart, and was rushed to the hospital by kind strangers. But in the end, there was no saving me. I passed away alone. Not a single person to claim my body. The painful memories of my past life resurfaced. Thinking back, I walked closer to Julian. That 100 yuan you threw at me. That's your charity. You've been stinking up this place. And no one cares. But before you leave, remember to pay me back what you owe. Or I will use legal means to sue you. I walked out of Julian's house, my heels clicking on the ground. It felt like I had shaken off all the humiliation from my past life. At that moment, I felt completely relieved. Ryan was waiting downstairs in the car, immediately handing me a coat. Is it cold? Put this on before you catch a chill. In my past life, Julian cursed me to never find love again. But unfortunately for him, it wouldn't come true this time. Ryan loved me deeply. He supported my career and cared for me in every aspect of life. During this business trip, Ryan took me to meet his parents, giving me a sense of security. We leaned on each other, facing the challenges together, overcoming every obstacle. On the day of the proposal, I fulfilled my desire. Ryan pretended to need me to accompany him to the hotel restroom, but secretly invited my family and friends to the scene. When my dad placed the veil on my head, I walked down the red carpet, one step at a time. Towards the end of the road, they handed me rose after rose. And I felt so happy. It almost didn't feel real. Ryan stood at the end of the red carpet, holding a bouquet of roses, waiting for me. The background wall was covered in pink hues, romantic and dreamy, with two big words, "Marry me." Ryan's proposal speech was heartfelt. "My dear Chester, thank you for letting me meet you. I know you've been through a lot to get to where you are today. From now on, I'll walk beside you. I'll protect you with everything I have and will never let anyone hurt you again. I swear. In the name of love. You are the most important and precious person in my life. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in my eyes as I said yes to Ryan's proposal. The video of the proposal was shared in our class group chat, and once again, I became the gossip of the group. Old classmates envied me for finding such an outstanding boyfriend, handsome, talented, and even willing to share his bank cards with me. I had once envied Julian for giving up his graduate school spot for love. But now the tables had turned. A good love should be balanced. Both sides equally matched. I envy Chester so much. These days, people with love brains should be sent to dig wild vegetables. Someone else was eager for gossip, asking, "How is Julian doing?" He was the one with the most dramatic romance in our class. A classmate with insider knowledge spoke up. "What a waste. Such a bright future thrown away. Tell me what happened." I used to think he was the most promising person in our class. He was a genius in exams. I even looked up to him. What a pity he chose wrong and missed out on a great opportunity. And what about Chloe? Are they still together? They're almost engaged. She has a rich second-generation boyfriend now. Haven't you seen her updates? Julian really wasted it all. A word of advice: never let love cloud your judgment. Focus on your career instead. I silently read through the group chat messages. Both Julian and I had become the topic of conversation for after-school gossip. The difference was, I had become the lucky one, envied by others for having both love and success. Julian had gone from being a lone hero to a joke, his pedestal crumbling. But on the day of my wedding, Julian's unexpected appearance shattered the peace. When I walked onto the stage in my wedding dress, my dad was holding my hand, slowly leading me to Ryan. "Chester." Julian rushed into the wedding venue, shouting my name loudly. The security guards blocked him. All the guests turned their attention to his voice, and whispers started to spread. "Who is that? Is he trying to crash the wedding?" I feared Julian might cause some trouble. Immediately on high alert. After all, in my past life, he had cursed me to never find love. It had only been 3 months. But Julian's eyes were dull, lacking the former brilliance he once had. My dad asked me, "What happened to Julian? He looks so different." I shook my head. Julian made a scene at my wedding, barging in and yelling into a megaphone. "Chester, it's all your fault I ended up like this. Now I'm restricted from high spending. Are you happy now? We grew up together. But you couldn't even spare me any compassion. You even had me sued. Now I can't go anywhere. Can't do anything. And you still think you'll find happiness?" Julian pushed past the security guards, pulling a knife from his pocket and heading straight for the stage. I was frozen with fear. In my past life, Julian had set me up for a terrible fate. I never expected that this time. He still hadn't changed. Ryan, fearing Julian would do something to harm me, quickly moved to shield me. Just as the knife was about to reach me, my dad shoved me aside, and the blade struck him instead. Thankfully, the security guards arrived in time and subdued Julian. My dad only had his sleeve torn. narrowly avoiding a worse injury. We had escaped the worst. My dad couldn't understand it. Julian, Yadad al-Sai. The boy who had grown up with us. What had happened to him? Before the police arrived, my dad walked over to speak with Julian. Julian, I've never been unkind to you. Why would you do something like this? Julian struggled fiercely, his voice full of hatred. Chester's dad. I'm desperate. It's all because of your daughter. She pressured me to pay back the money. And she wouldn't give me any room to talk. Julian shot a murderous glare at me. When I heard those words, I couldn't help but laugh. How was I the one who pushed him? Did I force him to give up graduate school? Or did I pressure him into becoming a love-struck fool? Isn't it only right to repay one's debts? Since when did he become some kind of lord? In my previous life, Julian wasn't like this at all. He had achieved great success, lived in comfort, and indulged in every pleasure fame and fortune could offer. Yet he still regretted losing his so-called love and chose to take revenge on me. But life doesn't work that way. No one gets to have everything they want. When you gain something, you inevitably lose something else. This time, Julian chose love and took a different path. Naturally, he also lost everything that once could have been his. I told him calmly, back then in the hospital, when I lent you that money, we agreed it would be a loan. The IOU was notarized. If you can't be grateful, that's your choice, but don't think you can turn your back on me and pretend I don't exist. When the police took Julian away, he glared at me with hatred in his eyes, sharper and colder than in my previous life. The day after my wedding, Margot came to my parents' house, leaning heavily on her cane. When she saw me open the door, she dropped the cane and fell to her knees with a dull thud. Chester, please, help Julian. If he really goes to jail, his life will be over and I won't be able to rest in peace. He just took a wrong turn. He's still a good boy at heart. Looking at her frail, veined hands and emaciated body, I couldn't help but feel my resolve soften. I helped Margaret back to her home and was stunned by what I saw. I knew Julian had been living in difficult circumstances these past few months. But Margaret's room was spotless. There were new clothes hanging neatly in the wardrobe, and the cupboards were stocked with rice and flour. In the end, Ryan helped me handle the matter. Since Julian hadn't caused any serious harm, he was detained for half a month. Julian promised me that he would find a new job soon and repay me regularly each month. After Ryan and I got married, we bought a new apartment near our workplace. I was in the middle of organizing a charitable donation for our village when someone must have shared the news online. And to my surprise, the once unremarkable me had become the pride of my hometown. On Christmas Day, Julian appeared outside my company building. Ryan worried it might not be safe for me to meet him alone, and wanted to come along. But I refused. Some people, some matters, some words must eventually come to an end. Julian stood there with his head lowered, hands in his pockets. Do you remember what day it is today? I thought for a moment. Of course I remembered. In my previous life, this was the day I died. While everyone else was celebrating Christmas, basking in the romance of the first snow, I was dying, curled up in a cold street corner, utterly humiliated. Julian had told me then that after I was kicked out of the company, the rival firm had taken over my research project and even won an award with it. That revelation had literally killed me. He knew I'd had a weak heart since childhood, that I couldn't take such shocks. But he hadn't expected that his words would send me to my grave. Feigning indifference, I said, I don't remember. Isn't it just Christmas? He pulled out an apple and handed it to me. Merry Christmas. Remember how we promised as kids that we'd both become great people someday? That we'd revive our hometown together? Look at me now, I've become nothing. I should mention, in our past life, after Julian became famous, he donated $5 million to our hometown funding roads and schools. Everyone in the village praised him. TV stations even came to interview him. Julian gave a self-deprecating smile. I really envy you. You have success. And someone who truly loves you. I thought to myself, you don't need to envy me. In our last life, you were the one who surpassed me in every way. It was you who threw it all away. Once the arrow leaves the bow, there's no taking it back. Life offers no rewind button. We all have to live with our choices. I no longer hated Julian. Heaven had given me another chance. And this time, I chose to forgive not him, but myself. Before leaving, I told Julian softly, "Live well." As I turned to go, he suddenly called out to me by my childhood nickname, just as he used to. "Chester." "I'm sorry." My steps halted, my eyes stung with sudden heat. Those were the words I'd waited far too long to hear. Even in my last life, when I was being wheeled into the operating room, I couldn't understand why Julian had done what he did. Without turning back, I walked away. Behind me came four trembling words. "I regret it." A sudden thought struck me. Had Julian been reborn too? Was he regretting giving up graduate school? Or regretting what he'd done to me in our previous life? Because in this life, I had kept my distance from him completely. I never interfered with his decisions. Never stood in his way. Especially the time he gave up his graduate school recommendation for love. That was what he'd held against me the longest before. He had driven me into a relapse of my heart condition, sending me to an early grave on the operating table. I had sworn that in this life, I would never meddle in his affairs again. Whatever happened to him would be his own fate, not mine to bear. I turned back slowly. "You don't need to regret anything. The one who should regret is me. I was the fool who meddled too much in my past life." Julian suddenly dropped to his knees right there in the street, drawing a crowd of onlookers. "Chester. I'm sorry. It was my arrogance, my insecurity that destroyed you. If it weren't for you, I would never have realized how blessed I once was. I thought that by taking a different path this time, by choosing love, I'd live a better life. But I never imagined it would end like this, abandoned, broken, unfulfilled, and despised." In that instant, I was certain Julian had been reborn too. We were like two people standing with a god's-eye view, fully aware of everything that had happened before. In his previous life, he stood at the height of glory. A single move from him could have ruined me. In this one, he had lost his love, his power, his status, reduced to a man struggling just to survive. In the long, hopeless days that followed, he must have longed endlessly for those dazzling years of triumph. But I was different now. The shadows of the past were gone, and before me stretched a bright, open road. I knew that every step I took forward was leading me toward a better tomorrow. After our last meeting, Julian transferred money to my bank account every month, as promised. Later, I heard that Julian had decided to start over, working while preparing for his graduate school exams. However, with the increasing number of applicants each year, the competition was becoming fierce. Without the guaranteed spot his school had once given him, Julian failed his second attempt at the graduate exams. I remember how confidently he had told me before that even without attending graduate school, he would still make a successful life for himself. But seeing his current state, I couldn't help but admit that when someone chooses to give up and spiral, fate will quickly take back their gifts and abilities. Julian had a band and his guaranteed graduate school offer to follow his heart, thinking only of Chloe. But now, Chloe had moved on and found a new boyfriend. I heard that after breaking up with Julian, Chloe had met a wealthy young man through a family-arranged blind date. He was not only rich, but also well-educated, taking her to new places and showing her the world. Chloe was deeply attracted to him, and the two of them decided to marry. When Julian found out, he was crushed. The love he had given everything up for had dealt him a fatal blow. Because he had forgotten that Chloe had once loved him for his brilliance, for the halo of the genius he wore, not for the broken man he had become. Without those accolades, Julian was just another face in the crowd. As for me, I was no longer the same person as I had been in my past life. I didn't interfere in Julian's life anymore. Instead, I received gifts from fate. My company learned about my contribution to a local charity project to build roads in my hometown, and they generously added $2 million to support my initiative. My parents in the village held their heads high, praised by everyone for having such a successful, dutiful daughter. The moment Julian transferred the final sum of money to me, I deleted him from my WeChat contacts. Goodbye, Julian. Goodbye to the shadows that once hung over me. Life cannot be relived. Every step counts. Love is precious. Yes, have a so, but when faced with academics and career, remember to prioritize your future. Maybe things don't seem perfect now, but this is the best script that fate has given you. The best outcome you could have hoped for. And I've truly learned to let go of the urge to help others. To respect the destinies of those around me. Now, I must move forward. The road ahead is full of possibilities. And my future is waiting for me. I wish everyone a bright future. At the retirement ceremony, my husband, the professor who had always looked at me coldly, unexpectedly reached out to invite me onto the stage. In front of everyone, he placed his arm around my waist and tenderly smoothed my hair. Just when I thought the clouds were finally parting and I could see the moon, he suddenly shoved me away. With a stern voice, he declared that he wanted a divorce to marry his first love, and that he would leave his work, patents, and assets to her and her 3 sons. He then pointed at me from a high position, saying, and if it weren't for me bringing him back to the city and loving him obsessively back then, he would never have married me out of compromise. Looking at the seemingly perfect family of 5 under the spotlight, I, a childless woman by choice, collapsed and died in the dark corner on the spot. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in the year when the young intellectuals were returning to the city. Since the tragic bond in my past life was due to the qualification for returning to the city, I decided to give up that qualification in this life. Since they blamed me for occupying the nest, I would let them have it. Wishing them a lifetime of happiness together. Diana, why are you in a daze? Hurry up and help Sarah wash the sanitary belt. She's having stomach pains today. And later you should make her some brown sugar water. Kevin's reprimand pulled me back to reality. Looking at the 40-year-old version of him, who kept shoving clothes into my hands, I couldn't help but frown. Don't forget Sarah's shirts and winter clothes. My work pants and socks. They all need to be washed today. Oh, and Sarah is very clean. So make sure the collar of her shirt is white, and there's not a hint of odor on the sanitary belt. Still in a daze, I numbly accepted the pile of clothes and nodded. The teasing voices of other male intellectuals reached my ears. Kevin, you're amazing. Diana listens to you like a puppet. I envy Kevin so much. With such a capable and obedient partner, who can take you away to live a good life. Sigh, Kevin so sold my and Sasha. You guys don't know. Diana insisted on marrying me. And I had no choice but to go back to the city and enjoy life. The clothes of that dog couple made me feel disgusted. The water in the laundry basin was ice cold and numbing. I once thought that if I worked hard enough and did everything right, Kevin would eventually fall in love with me. But it wasn't until my last breath that I understood. My obedience only earned me his contempt. After I woke up, the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. And I couldn't help but knock over the laundry basin. Kevin, who heard the noise, looked at me in disgust. You can't even do this small task. How will you take care of my mom in the future? Learn from Sarah. She's good at everything. Hurry and pick up the clothes. I still have some hot water. Dilute it and wash them quickly. At the mention of hot water, Sarah, clutching her stomach, walked over. Kevin, my stomach hurts. Can you pour me some hot water? Kevin immediately poured all the hot water from the kettle for Sarah. Sarah covered her mouth and laughed mischievously, looking at me with a challenging gaze. Thanks, Diana. Since Kevin and I are from the same hometown and close like siblings. If you don't mind, I'll just call you sister-in-law from now on. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Who's your sister-in-law? Besides, I'm not washing anyone's clothes. Whoever wore them can wash them. Diana, Sarah is speaking to you nicely. What's your attitude? If you don't perform well, I won't marry you or go back to the city with you. Kevin threatened me while patting Sarah on the shoulder in comfort. Then don't marry. Don't go back, I retorted. I get it now. Diana, are you jealous? I didn't expect you to care so much about me. All right. I'll give you another chance to show yourself. I haven't turned enough for points today. So later. Help me chop some firewood. Looking at the smirk on Kevin's face, I shuddered. How could I have been so blind in my previous life to fall for such a shameless, self-absorbed lazy man? Besides being good-looking and good at studying, he was worthless in every other way. Kevin, I won't wash your clothes. And I won't chop firewood for you. The book says that young intellectuals should be self-reliant and participate more in labor. Haven't you heard? With that, I turned and walked away, leaving them both staring at each other. Kevin, what's up with Diana? I'm a little worried. It's okay, Sarah. I've got her under control. I'll coax her. After we get back to the city, I'll divorce her immediately and bring you over. However, Kevin, full of self-satisfaction, had no idea that this time, I would never love him again. Reflecting on my past life, I lived as a widow for 40 years. Kevin didn't want to be tied down by children, so he forced me to be childless. I suffered the pain of an early sterilization. He said that the love of intellectuals was pure, like Plato's. So on the second day after we married, he stopped touching me. He would rather sleep on the floor than share a bed with me. As an agricultural expert, he went on business trips to the countryside frequently. I used to think he was busy researching sorghum fields. But now I know he was busy plowing Sarah's field. How else could he have 3 sons? He didn't dislike children. He just didn't want children with me. He didn't lack desire. He simply had no interest in me. While he was living it up with Sarah in the countryside, I was at home serving my mother-in-law and her mother, washing clothes, cooking meals, and helping them with their most humiliating needs. I endured their sarcasm, contempt, and scorn. They complained that I, a temporary worker, wasn't worthy of a university professor, and blamed me for not bearing children, making me feel worthless. If you have any sense of gratitude, hand over the compensation. What are you planning to do with the money? If it weren't for Kevin sacrificing himself to marry you, would you be living this life? Ungrateful country bumpkin. Even hens can lay eggs. Yet you, a butterfly, can't have children. It was thanks to my qualification that Kevin could return to the city and have the opportunity to pursue a PhD, and later become a professor. But they twisted the truth and painted him as my savior. My once soft hands were now calloused, my frail body emaciated. When I died, I weighed barely 75 pounds. I once thought that the essence of love was loneliness and sacrifice. But it wasn't until the retirement ceremony, when I saw Kevin's unshakable affection for Sarah, that I realized he never loved me. Thank God, I get to live again. Since the tragedy in my past life was caused by the qualification to return to the city, I will give up that qualification in this life. I will leave my love on the vast black land, and will no longer give the scumbag the chance to return to the city as my fiancé. In this life, I will turn around and give my love to the one who truly loves me. Arriving at the logging camp, I saw a tall and powerful figure chopping wood alone. I hurried over, holding a cob of corn. Max. He turned his head, his face sharp-edged but his eyes betraying an undeniable gleam of surprise. Diana, what do you need from me? He asked with a commanding tone that startled me into a shiver. If it weren't for the fact that in my past life, he took care of everything for me after I died, even confiding his true feelings, I wouldn't have known that he had remained unmarried for me all these years. Looking at his bright, dark eyes, his broad shoulders, and thick, strong arms, I couldn't help but imagine how well I would live if I were with him. I gathered all the courage from both lives, and said, Max, I want to stay at the forest farm. I don't want to return to the city. No, he exclaimed, his gaze fiery, as if he were going to devour me. His eyes were full of concern and pity, and with a sharp motion, he threw down the axe. His reaction made me so frightened that I was on the verge of tears. Hearing my sobs, Max immediately panicked. Diana. No, Diana. Please don't cry. If you don't want to come back, then don't. It's all up to you. Okay? He reached out, intending to wipe my tears, but pulled his hand back awkwardly. His large hand rubbed against his clothes before finally dropping it in embarrassment. I'm not afraid of hardship or poverty, I said, twisting the hem of my shirt, glancing up at him. I just want to stay. To find someone who loves me and lead a good life. Max suddenly deflated. Like a balloon with no air. He sat down angrily in the snow and said, "So, Kevin, Diana, a low sigh. Are you telling everyone that you want to stay with Kevin?" Seeing the misunderstanding, I hurriedly grabbed his sleeve. "Kevin doesn't love me. I'm breaking up with him. Max. I want to marry you." Max's throat bobbed. But he couldn't look at me. His ears turned red. He stammered. "Diana. Do you mean it?" I stared at him without hesitation. "Max. Do you want to live with me?" "Yes," Kevin fulfilled my obsession. "More than anything. I've dreamt of marrying you." Max jumped up, his eyes suddenly sparkling. And his rugged features beamed with joy. He pulled me into his warm embrace. Pressing against his solid chest. Feeling the slight tries of his body. I couldn't help but blush and feel my heart race. My legs turned weak. "By the way, Diana. My household registration isn't in the forest farm. I'm taking a leave today to ride back to my hometown to get the household registration. When I come back, we'll go get our marriage certificate." A month before we were due to return to the city, Kevin assumed it was a done deal. He came to Sarah's room every few days. I remembered the ceremony when their eldest son proudly declared, almost mockingly, that his parents had finally overcome the chains of worldly expectations to pursue their love. My mother has been kind and hardworking all these years. Silently sacrificing. Unlike someone who not only occupies my father but also enjoys his academic achievements. Causing my parents to live apart for so long. It felt as though I were the villain. The one who destroyed a family. Looking at their son. I guessed he was probably conceived just before our return to the city. I couldn't care less. My thoughts were entirely with Max. Wondering when he would return. "Diana. I have a fever. Do you have any medicine?" One afternoon, Kevin came looking for me. Sarah. Pouting. Weakly approached. "Sarah. You have a fever? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Kevin exclaimed, hurriedly supporting her. "Diana. Sarah can't work today. I'm ordering you to finish her work." Seeing the command in his eyes, I widened mine. Kevin leaned close and whispered in my ear. "Sarah is from my hometown. She's like family to us. Our Kevin family has high standards for a wife. If you want to marry me, you should show your worth." In my past life, because I insisted on reclaiming the work points that were rightfully mine from Sarah, Kevin had exploded in anger. Even collaborating with the group leader to incite others to criticize me for not being united. Ignoring my menstrual cramps. I had climbed the mountain with an axe and finished Sarah's task of measuring the trees. Enduring the joint pain. Just as I was about to head back, I felt dizzy and collapsed from exhaustion. Thankfully, a few locals happened to pass by. Otherwise, I might have ended up as a bear's lunch. The work leader had the female youth take me to the hospital for an IV. Since the girls knew of my relationship with Kevin, they secretly informed him to come take care of me. To my surprise, even when I was about to be discharged, he still hadn't shown up. The day I was discharged, the north wind howled, and it was freezing cold. I asked the female youth to get me my thick cotton jacket, but she said she couldn't find it. No matter how much she searched through my wardrobe. Helpless, I braved the cold wind and blinding snow, trudging back to the dorm. In the evening, Kevin and Sarah finally showed up. Late. "Diana. Sarah hasn't been feeling well. But as soon as we heard you were discharged, we came to visit. Why are you giving us the cold shoulder? You thief. Take off my jacket." I shouted at Sarah. Sarah, frightened, hid behind Kevin, saying, "I'm not a thief." Kevin gave it to me. He said you wouldn't need it at the hospital, but I was cold and couldn't bear it. "Diana. Why are you making such a fuss over a small thing? We're about to get married. Your jacket is mine now. So why can't I help Sarah? Besides, we're going back to the city. And you won't need this thick jacket anymore. Wouldn't it be better to give it to someone who needs it?" I felt a sharp headache. Unwilling to argue. But Kevin kept going. "You'd better sort out your ration tickets and your newer clothes and bedding. Leave them all for Sarah. You won't need them when we return to the city. After we're married, I'll buy you new things. It's not easy for Sarah on her own. Let's give her more. Kevin kept talking. As if he couldn't wait to give Sarah all my valuable things. After we got married in the previous life, he never bought me a single thing. But every month, he sent a large sum of money to the place we were sent to, under the pretense of building a second hometown. But it was really just to support Sarah and her family. Once you've sorted everything out, I'll marry you and we'll go back to the city together. Kevin was so confident. Oblivious to the coldness in my heart, still dreaming of his return to the city as a soon-to-be groom. Recalling the nightmare of my previous life, I silently reminded myself to stay still until Max retrieved the household registration, to avoid any complications. I forced myself to nod, suppressing the disgust. Okay. I'll pack everything up and send it to Sarah in a couple of days. Kevin nodded, satisfied, completely unaware that I had already hidden my return qualification certificate and had sent a report to my father's old comrade Li Jiuoqiang, the brigade commander of the forest farm, declaring my intention to voluntarily give up my return qualification. Although the commander hadn't replied yet, I trusted that he would understand my deep love for the frontier. As the day of our return to the city drew closer, Kevin couldn't stop boasting about our upcoming good fortune to anyone he met. Fearing the return qualification he had so carefully secured might slip away. He even took the initiative to plan our wedding, proposing to have one in the countryside and another in the city afterward. Watching him shamelessly solicit guests from the locals, I felt nothing but embarrassment. Diana, aren't you excited? You've been wanting to marry Kevin all this time. Yet you don't seem the least bit thrilled now that it's actually happening? A female intellectual remarked. Puzzled. Indeed. Something good was nearing. But not just yet. I thought to myself silently. Seeing Kevin so busy, Sarah looked displeased again. Kevin. You've forgotten about me. You should just marry Diana properly. Sarah. What are you saying? I don't love Diana at all. I only want her for her city qualification. It's you I love. Then, can you help me switch to a different job? Because I was small and weak, I was initially assigned to handle logistics, managing heating in all the dormitories, while Sarah, tall and full-figured, was seen as the ideal candidate for forestry work. However, despite her physical appearance, she couldn't endure the hard labor. She either asked me for help or flirted with various brothers to get out of work. No. She was hoping to switch to a more comfortable role once we returned to the city. What she didn't know was that managing the heating in the intellectual work site was no easy task. Not only did the smoke leave my face blackened, but I often got my hair singed by the flames. All right. I agree to the switch, I said. When Kevin heard my response, he seemed to hesitate for a moment. We're about to go back to city life. And you won't be doing forestry work for much longer. I'll even help you, he said earnestly. It didn't matter to me after all. My real helper would be arriving soon. But I couldn't help but wonder why Max's hometown was so far away. Far enough to make my heart uneasy. After being betrayed by Kevin once in my past life, I couldn't bear the thought of another betrayal. Late at night, the sound of hoofs grew louder, steadily approaching. The rhythmic clip-clop seemed to step right on my heart. I leaned closer to the window and realized the sound had stopped beneath it. Diana. I'm back. I brought the household registration certificate. Max's deep voice carried a sense of excitement. And next morning, I opened the door and found Max waiting outside. His long lashes covered in frost. In one hand, he held the household registration certificate, and in the other, he held a bouquet of wildflowers, solemnly inviting me onto his horse. I held onto his waist, feeling as if my happiness were about to overflow. In front of the leaders of the intellectual work site, Max promised to care for me for the rest of his life. I looked up at his face, smiling sweetly. In his excitement, he suddenly lifted me over his head. And only when I sternly told him to stop did he gently put me down. Diana. Thank you for rooting yourself in the borderlands. We'll keep your secret until we hear from the instructor. With just 1 week left in the countdown, Kevin grew increasingly complacent. He put his feet up, stopped working, and spent his time in the final moments of affection with Sarah. They took all of my food and fabric coupons. And still, They weren't satisfied. Diana. Leave your ancestral amulet here. Sarah's been having nightmares lately. Kevin demanded. The amulet was a cherished heirloom passed down from my grandmother. Looking into my reddened eyes, Kevin wasn't at all concerned. The logging site is dangerous. And it might save Sarah's life. I'll buy you another amulet later. I took the amulet and handed it to Sarah. I wish you peace and safety. And hope you reunite with the one you love soon. Touched by my words, Sarah smiled broadly and no longer pretended. Diana. Don't worry. I'll make sure Kevin treats you well. Too bad. I didn't need it anymore. On the day we were to return to the city, Kevin led a grand procession. Kevin fulfilled my obsession. Surrounded by the farewell crowd, with packages of gifts from the locals, he eagerly prepared to depart. Kevin. Don't forget about us after you go back to the city. I really envy Kevin. He doesn't have to suffer in this freezing weather. He's going to become a city person. Watching him strut with his nose in the air, I sneered inside. Without my city qualification, I wondered how he would manage his grand plans. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye. Vast land. Kevin waved mockingly. Comrade. Please present your city qualification certificate. The cold train conductor interrupted, raising a hand to stop Kevin. Kevin's eyes flashed with panic for a moment. But he quickly regained his composure. Here. Please take a look. The conductor examined the certificate carefully, then waved him on. Kevin looked at me triumphantly. We're on the train. Diana. See? I've already taken care of your qualification certificate. Didn't expect that, did you? I froze. Despite all my precautions, he had managed to steal my city qualification certificate. I had kept it close to me at all time. Sure, did it end up in his hands? Just as I was in shock, I saw Max in the distance, casting me a covert glance. Following his gaze, I saw the head of the intellectual group approaching. Thank you for seeing me off. Don't worry. I'll make sure Diana and I work hard in the city and live up to the organization's expectations. And I hope the other comrades will continue to work hard to build a beautiful black land. Kevin couldn't help but raise his fist in an impassioned salute. Quiet. The head of the intellectual group interrupted, his voice stern. Kevin. Diana. You cannot return to the city. Please get off the train immediately. Kevin's raised arm faltered, and his face fell silent. At first, he tried to resist, but upon seeing the train police behind the intellectual group leader, he slinked back in defeat. Who the hell do you think you are? Stopping us from returning to the city? Kevin's eyes were bloodshot, veins bulging as he threw a tantrum, ignoring any semblance of decency or intellect. I'm just following orders. If you have a problem, take it up with the instructor, the leader said, refusing to look at him. Will Kevin's qualification be blacklisted? It's a conspiracy, having fulfilled my obsession. Definitely a conspiracy. Someone must have taken Kevin's spot. Yeah. It must be the head of the intellectual group. Don't be fooled by his appearance. Kevin's farewell group murmured among themselves. But none dared to stand up for him. Even though we had been stopped, I still felt uneasy, fearing Kevin would try some trick to get back on the train. After all, the instructor had yet to respond to my application to give up the qualification. Instructor. You're finally here. The head of the intellectual group is obstructing our progress and won't let us return to the city. Please arrest him. I think you're the one who should be arrested. The instructor's sharp gaze was filled with undeniable authority. He shook off Kevin's hand and produced a city qualification certificate, stamped with abandoned. You've already given up your return qualification. How dare you try to sneak back on the train? Kevin stumbled forward, his voice shaky. Who says I gave up? Comrade. Look. I have the return certificate. You must have made a mistake. I haven't made a mistake, and in fulfill my psych. The instructor snapped, snatching the certificate from Kevin's hand. This certificate is fake. He pointed to the blurry watermark. Kevin. You're involved in document forgery. And that's illegal. The conductor has already made a report. Kevin, terrified, fell to his knees. Instructor. I didn't break the law. This is Diana's certificate. If anyone's at fault, it's her. You should arrest her. And let me return to the city. How shameless. Relying on Diana to get back to the city. And now blaming her when things go wrong. The watching ants couldn't help but comment. Kevin, wadana wo sai. Still on his knees. Rubbed them against the ground and insisted. Instructor. Everyone knows my relationship with Diana. I'm the fiancé of a martyr's child. I have the right to return to the city. Oh? Now you're playing the devoted lover? Who's the one sneaking into Sarah's bed every night? We saw them step together in the sorghum field more than once. The last time we caught them. They said they were studying. Pa. Instructor. Kevin's to timing and ruining morals. You should take care of this. The instructor raised a hand for silence. We'll investigate the fake certificate and moral issues thoroughly. Diana. As a martyr's child. You've chosen to give up the city to settle in the frontier. On behalf of the youth team. I thank you again. At the same time. The team promises, no matter when you want to return to the city. We'll support you fully. The door to the city will always be open for you. As the train slowly pulled away. Kevin, still kneeling. Was escorted away. In my previous life. Though I was just a housewife. I kept up with the news. Reading newspapers and staying informed. I knew that. Apart from timber. Deer antlers were also valuable in the Northeast. So I dragged Max along to get a breeding license. Ordered a stud deer. And built a farm for breeding cyca deer. My capital wasn't much, only my father's pension, but Max. Seeing that we were both poor. Decided to build the farm first. Which meant our wedding would have to wait. Max, with a dark face. Grumbled. Diana. When are we going to have the wedding? I've waited so long. I just wanted to get the farm up and running first. We've already gotten our certificate. Are you afraid I'll run away? Diana. I have money. We can build the farm and hold the wedding at the same time. I really fear losing you. You're like a porcel and all. And I'm just a clumsy bear. I feel like I don't deserve you. Max grasped both my hands tightly. His burning touch searing through my heart. His arms were steady and strong. His embrace warm and solid. And his broad shoulders felt like a shelter from the storm. Welcoming me with unwavering loyalty. Because of his past contributions and his willingness to confess. Kevin was released from investigation on the grounds of leniency. But he still couldn't let go of the instructor's words. Hoping to convince me to return to the city. When he came to the girls' dormitory. He found that I had already moved out. Without the support of the community. Kevin became like a rat crossing the street. People not only ignored him but also demanded he return the farewell supplies he had received. Kevin asked around in a low voice. Then, with his shoulders hunched, made his way to the farm. Diana. I'm back. I finally found you. What's the point of raising deer? Let's get married today and return to the city together. Kevin's unshaven face gleamed with 100 scheming thoughts. Kevin. Didn't you notice? That day, petting fulfilled Xianxia. I never intended to return to the city. He paused to think. No luggage. No ticket. He had been hanging around outside the crowd. I don't want to marry you. I'm not going back to the city. I said. Cold and resolute. Diana. It doesn't matter if you don't want to return. Just marry me. And I'll go back to the city. Is that all right? When I shook my head, Kevin pulled out a small knife and pressed it against my waist. Diana. Don't refuse me. Haven't you always wanted to marry me? Today. I'll give you what you want and make sure we get our certificate. Max had to leave for a moment to deal with something. And alone. I couldn't resist Kevin. I reluctantly followed him to the marriage registration office. He held me tightly by the shoulders. Wait. Once we get the certificate. I'll put away the knife. I won't hurt you. I'm sorry. But you can't marry here. Kevin. Furious at being refused again. Shouted. Why not? We're both willing. Because bigamy is illegal. I only like Sarah. I haven't married her. So it's not bigamy. Kevin breathed a sigh of relief. It's not you. It's Diana. She's already married. Impossible. You're making this up. I'll complain about you. He shouted. Slamming the desk. Causing papers to scatter everywhere. Unable to tolerate his madness. I took out the marriage certificate I had kept hidden close to my chest and gently placed it on the table. Max and Diana. Married voluntarily. After review. It complies with marriage law and is issued this certificate. Who's Max? You're cheating on me behind my back? I don't believe this. It must be a fake certificate. I'll tear it up. I don't recognize your marriage. The red marriage certificate was instantly torn into red fragments. Before I could react, Kevin was knocked to the ground with a punch. Blood spilling from his mouth. Max, still furious, tried to step forward. But I stopped him firmly. This punch is a warning. If I ever see you harass my wife again, I'll kill you. Max wrapped his arms around me and, panting, said, "Sorry, Diana. I came late. Don't be mad. Okay? I had to get a gold bracelet from my grandmother for you." With his rough hand, he carefully slid the bracelet over my wrist, holding my hand and stroking it gently. "Diana. I love you. Without a marriage certificate, we're free to be together forever." We locked eyes. His gaze deep and beautiful, and I felt my blood race through my veins. The world seemed to melt away. "Kevin. I'm already married. I won't be clinging to you anymore. I wish you happiness." In my past life, they had accused me of occupying another's place. In this life, I would make things right and let them love each other. Kevin, having lost both his qualifications and his reputation, arrived at Sarah's door only to find that she had also moved out. Passing aunts whispered as they saw Kevin. "I heard Sarah has found another man." How many is this now? This time it seems like it's the young man from the neighboring youth group, the one who's leaving for the city next month. Isn't it? She's fickle. And only Kevin was foolish enough to remain devoted to her. One blow after another left Kevin bedridden. His beard unkempt. His body exhausted. As if he had become a completely different person. He couldn't accept how, in just 2 short weeks, he had fallen from being a promising young man on the brink of returning to the city, to a man with nothing. Even more difficult for him to swallow was that, once surrounded by the love of 2 women, both the ones he loved and who loved him, he was now left utterly alone. Filled with frustration and unwilling to accept his fate, he was determined to reclaim his future and his love. Without waiting for his body to recover, he started loitering around the breeding farm every few days. Whenever Max wasn't around, he would rush in and start working. Always choosing the dirtiest, hardest tasks. At first, I'd chase him away. But soon, I stopped acknowledging him altogether. I would watch as he lowered his head, pinched his nose, and dug through the manure or cleaned the animal cages. His former arrogance now gone, I couldn't help but feel that he had brought this upon himself. On my birthday, he sold his blood to buy a pocket watch for me, with our names engraved inside. I refused it, but he kneeled in the snow all night, begging me to give him another chance, until he was rushed to the hospital, still murmuring my name. Out of humanitarian concern, the head of the intellectuals suggested I visit him. When I walked in, Kevin eagerly propped himself up on his bed and said, "Diana, Max is a big liar. I finally caught him. He's not even a proletarian. His family owns a large plot of land and several farms. And he even has an arranged marriage." I didn't need him to tell me this. I had already guessed that Max's family was well off, as they always had the latest and most fashionable things. "Diana, I was blinded before because of Sarah. I've written everything about my relationship with her and handed it over to the organization and her new boyfriend. He dumped her. And now she can't return to the city. Are you happy? How she ends up is none of my concern. How you end up is also none of my concern." Seeing the resolute expression on my face, Kevin collapsed to his knees, furiously slapping himself. His cheeks welled up quickly, and blood began to seep from the corner of his mouth. "Diana, I can't live without you. You're my only one. Stop pretending. The only person you love is yourself. All you see is profit. Kevin, I hope you won't disturb my life anymore. Max not only has a farm, but he also has a hunting ground. He holds a legal gun permit. Be careful, or he'll make you regret it." After Kevin was discharged from the hospital, to avoid further trouble, the instructor transferred him to another intellectual work site. Max and I resumed our daily work at the breeding farm, occasionally indulging in some legitimate, married couple activities. Max's strong body wore me out every night. Diana, you really are like a porcelain and all. I can't take my eyes off you. Alright. Alright. That's the second time tonight. Hurry up and sleep. Then come closer so I don't roll over onto you. Max said, moving to the edge of the bed, but accidentally rolling off with a loud thud. Seeing me laugh, he became energized for a third round. Life continued in full swing. Shameless and full of joy. But deep inside, I always felt a faint unease. With Kevin's cunning and greed, I knew he wouldn't just give up easily. One day, after returning from the market, Max and I arrived home to find all the deer foaming at the mouth, staggering and falling over. He immediately recognized it as deer plague. Just as we were inspecting the source of the outbreak, a beam from the roof suddenly fell towards me. Max leapt in front of me, shielding me with his body, and took the brunt of the impact. I screamed in panic, tears streaming down my face, while Max inhaled sharply, forcing a calm smile. Don't worry. My wife. I'm fine. I'm strong. I can handle this. After treating his wound, we immediately reported the incident. The instructor took it very seriously, considering it a major case of property destruction affecting the people. Upon investigation, all evidence pointed to Kevin, but he had disappeared. The people in the dormitory said he had received a letter the previous morning and rushed out, never to return. The instructor asked us to write statements first and then apply for support from higher authorities. But unexpectedly, Sarah turned herself in. Because Kevin had ruined her dream of returning to the city, and her belly was growing day by day, Sarah had written a letter to Kevin, demanding he pay for her nourishment and acknowledge their son. To her surprise, Kevin didn't believe her and insulted her, saying she had no idea whose bastard child she was carrying. He also boasted that he had a plan and would soon be reclaiming me. Sarah, already emotionally unstable during her pregnancy, was pushed over the edge by his insults. In a fit of rage, she pushed him off a cliff. By the time the instructor and medical personnel arrived, Kevin was barely breathing, his body mutilated beyond recognition. His once handsome face was marred by jagged rocks and branches, and one of his legs had been crushed under a boulder. The scene was too horrific to look at. A month later, after being discharged from the hospital, Kevin was sent straight to prison. He would likely never see the light of day again, and Sarah was sentenced to death. With the help of a secret remedy from Max's family, the deer recovered and soon returned to health, lively and active. Our days also flourished, and we quickly became well known as a household worth tens of thousands. Looking at the household appliances in our home, and the strong man by my side, memories from my past life flooded back. I couldn't understand why. In the previous life, Kevin had publicly humiliated me to death for Sarah, and in this life, I had voluntarily withdrawn. Why? Then, let out a low sigh. Did it all lead to mutual destruction? Diana, don't overthink things. Go to bed. Isn't the exercise before sleep enough for you? Max said, grinning as he moved closer. I rubbed my waist and playfully pushed him away. I just don't understand. You don't understand many things, he replied with a mischievous smile. Like how I once secretly switched your return to city qualification certificate while we were hugging. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been a fake one stolen by Kevin. Or how I didn't dare reveal I was the owner of the farm at first, afraid you would think I was bourgeois. Or how I've waited behind you for 2 lifetimes, finally waiting for you to look back at me. What? Did you also reincarnate? Yes, heaven fulfilled my obsession. In the previous life, I heard you died from the anger they caused. I reported them to the authorities, but I followed you soon after. Thank you for choosing me in this life. I will love you forever. With that, he gently kissed my forehead and pulled me into his arms as we drifted into a peaceful sleep. In this life, I had finally found my happiness.